I sat across from them in that stale little conference room, pretending like I did not already know something bad was coming. You could smell it in the air. That weird corporate atmosphere, overloaded with too much carpet cleaner and a heavy blanket of fear. The fluorescent lights above hummed a monotonous tune. There was a cheap coffee machine humming in the corner and one dying ficus plant leaning heavily against the glass wall, looking like it wanted to quit its existence altogether. Miranda from Human Resources sat with her thick-framed glasses resting perfectly on the bridge of her nose, holding a thick manila file folder. She looked at me with an overly bright expression, acting as if she were about to announce that I had won an all-expenses-paid tropical cruise. "Julian," she said softly, her voice dripping with artificial sympathy. "We have completed the compensation realignment review across the entire division." I knew that exact corporate phrase. I had seen those words float through the company messaging channels like an ominous ghost for the past 6 months, but I honestly did not expect what came next from her painted lips. "Your new compensation package will be $77,700 annually." I stared at her in complete silence, then slowly shifted my gaze to Silas Thorne, my new division head from Kalen Enterprises. Silas was the kind of executive who could not tell a network router from a customized coffee mug, yet he held my entire career in his manicured hands. He did not even bother to look up at me. He just casually scribbled something in his leather-bound notebook, as if ruining a man's livelihood was merely a routine administrative task. I did the math in my head instantly. My current salary was $185,000. Going down to $77,700 meant a 58% pay cut, a massive, devastating blow to my entire existence, and they offered not a single word of genuine explanation. I could feel the heat rising fast in my neck, my blood pressure spiking, but I absolutely refused to give them the satisfaction of seeing me break. I simply nodded my head once, taking a slow breath. "I will think it over," I said, keeping my voice as flat as possible. I acted like they were offering me a choice between turkey or ham for a catered lunch, not literally cutting the financial floor out from under my entire life. Miranda smiled broadly, as if I had just agreed to help her bake a cake. She slid the heavy folder across the polished mahogany table. "It is effective immediately," she stated, still wearing that plastic smile. "Effective immediately." They expected me to work the exact same grueling hours, shoulder the exact same massive responsibilities, meet the exact same punishing deadlines, but for less than half the money. I did not speak another word, I did not curse, and I certainly did not pick up the heavy chair and throw it through the glass wall like every fiber of my being desperately wanted to do. I just stood up slowly, grabbed the manila folder, and walked straight out of that conference room, like I was not mentally spiraling into an abyss of panic. The second those heavy glass doors shut behind me, my hands began shaking uncontrollably. I walked down the hall, out of the building, and straight to my truck entirely on autopilot. I climbed into the driver's seat and just sat there in silence. I did not turn on any music. I did not make any phone calls. I just stared. The leather steering wheel felt like solid ice beneath my gripping hands. My mouth was as dry as desert sand. I kept thinking about the heavy mortgage on my house, the rising cost of groceries, the endless child support payments, the new baseball cleats my sons needed, the upcoming school field trip forms, and the fast-approaching holiday season. What on earth was I supposed to tell my two boys? I sat there in that parking lot for what felt like an eternity, struggling just to breathe properly, staring blankly at my own dashboard as if it might miraculously display a path forward. Eventually, I turned the key and started the engine. I drove straight home in a daze and parked in my driveway, but I could not bring myself to get out of the vehicle. I just sat there in the quiet evening, the engine turned off, watching the front porch light flicker unsteadily, wondering if it was about to burn out completely, just like my career. That job was supposed to be the one solid foundation I could always count on. I first joined Vertex Solutions 12 years ago. We were just 15 ambitious people jammed together in a tiny, shared office space over in the Industrial Valley. The carpet was stained and terrible. The coffee's knowledge's colleague was always bitter and burnt, and we had no air conditioning for half the summer. But we were a tight-knit family. We were hungry for success. Everyone pulled their own weight without complaint. Titles did not matter back then. We did not even use them. We only cared about delivering exceptional results to our clients. I thrived in that chaotic, demanding environment. During my first year, I worked through every single major holiday. I literally slept under my wooden desk during a massive 3-day server crash just to keep a client online. I missed my youngest son's very first school play because a critical software deployment window suddenly shifted at the last possible minute. I constantly told myself it was only a temporary sacrifice. I promised my wife the exact same thing, but it was never temporary. By my 7th year, I was personally managing 12 major enterprise clients. Over 60% of our entire service revenue flowed directly through my pipeline and my personal relationships. I was the dedicated guy they called frantically at midnight when the client was furious, when a crucial server fried itself, or when a project scope ballooned uncontrollably overnight. I always made things work smoothly. I always fixed the impossible problems. Then the devastating divorce hit me like a freight train. My wife left me for a younger guy named Orion, a man who taught hot yoga and constantly posted shirtless selfies from his vacations in Mexico. She moved away to another city, claiming she just needed space to breathe and find her true self. She left me with the big empty house, full custody of the 2 boys, a mountain of lingering bills, and absolutely no clear idea how I was supposed to juggle it all alone. My job became my sole anchor. It was the only predictable thing that made me feel like my life was not entirely falling apart at the seams. Then, the massive Kalen Enterprises bought out Vertex Solutions. They hosted a gigantic, overly produced video call for all employees. The Kalen chief executive officer grinned wildly, claiming this merger was all about massive scale and incredible, unprecedented opportunity. He spoke like a visionary savior. What he conveniently failed to mention was that he would personally walk away just 6 months later with an $8 million buyout package and a lucrative consulting gig located securely in Switzerland. We got a shiny new corporate logo and a massive influx of terrible management bloat. We were forced into endless, pointless meetings. The red tape grew thicker every single day. They made us build elaborate, colorful weekly slide presentations instead of actually fixing the real technical problems our clients faced. The targeted layoffs started slowly at first. They let the administrative staff go, then the operations team, then the experienced middle managers. There were never any real explanations provided, just mysterious calendar invites ominously labeled as status updates. My dedicated engineering team rapidly dropped from 8 talented people down to just 2 exhausted individuals. But the mountain of work never decreased. I was constantly fielding angry client calls late into the night. I found myself personally doing complex back-end coding fixes, half asleep in the early hours of the morning, simply because we no longer had enough dedicated development support. The stress was not just bad, it was a full-blown physiological overload. I found myself snapping angrily at my kids for minor things like leaving cereal boxes open. I would catch myself falling asleep while waiting at red traffic lights. My hands would randomly begin to shake while typing emails. But the harsh reality is that corporate loyalty is only considered useful to the wealthy people actively cashing in on it. When the brutal budget cuts came down from above, they never came for Silas Thorne or his little protected circle of agreeable followers from Kalen Enterprises. They came directly for the hardworking people who had been grinding endlessly. They targeted the exact people who had built the original company from nothing before it was ever deemed worth buying. And somehow, despite all the obvious warning signs, I still did not see it coming. Not until Miranda coldly handed me that absolute joke of an offer in the conference room. That was the exact moment I finally realized they were completely done pretending that I or my contributions mattered to them. So, I forced myself to get out of my truck, walked slowly inside my quiet house, and poured myself a very strong drink. I did not even finish the glass. I just stood completely still at the kitchen sink, staring blankly at my own tired reflection in the dark glass of the microwave door, desperately trying to swallow the rising tide of panic. Then, suddenly, my phone buzzed on the granite counter. The screen displayed the name Elias Vance. I had not heard a single word from Elias since he wisely bailed on the company 8 months ago. He was a brilliant strategist who saw the writing on the wall and got out early. I picked up the phone. Elias did not waste any time with pleasantries. "Julian," he said firmly, "have you checked your professional networking profile lately?" I let out a dry, humorless laugh. "Elias, I have been way too busy just trying to keep my head above the rising floodwater." He paused. "Well, you really should check it. I am working as a senior director with Kinetics Dynamics now." That statement instantly caught my full attention. Kinetics Dynamics was Kalen Enterprises' single biggest, most aggressive rival in the entire industry space. They boasted a significantly larger operational budget, infinitely smarter visionary leadership, far less bloated corporate fluff, and a ruthless focus on pure execution. "Our executive leadership team keeps asking me about you, Julian," Elias continued smoothly. "They know exactly what you built over there. Do you want to talk?" I did not answer right away. My heart was suddenly pounding violently against my ribs, but I forced my voice to stay perfectly steady. "They know I am still firmly employed over here," I replied cautiously. Elias chuckled softly. "Julian, they also know you are the single reason the client roster has not completely bled out since the catastrophic Kalen acquisition." He was not blowing smoke at all, and we both knew it was the absolute truth. "I will call you back," I said abruptly, and hung up the phone. I walked purposefully into my home office, shut the heavy wooden door behind me, and pulled out my original, decades-old employment contract from the bottom desk drawer. I read every single line of that old document twice, tracing the faded ink with my index finger. There was absolutely no non-compete clause. There was no non-disclosure agreement that legally covered any future employment restrictions whatsoever. We never had to sign anything like that back in the early days. The original founders believed strongly in mutual trust. That was their beautiful, fatal mistake. However, I remembered something extremely crucial. 3 months ago, Kalen Enterprises had forced everyone to sign a massive stack of updated corporate compliance documents. They claimed it was just standard boilerplate human resources paperwork. I had been out of the state visiting a sick relative that entire week. When I returned, Silas had vaguely mentioned that he handled my compliance paperwork for me to save me the administrative hassle. A cold spike of adrenaline shot through my veins. I quickly logged into the internal employee portal and pulled up my digital personnel file. There it was, a brand new, hyper-restrictive non-compete agreement, supposedly signed by me on a Thursday. The signature looked incredibly close to mine, but the digital timestamp proved it was uploaded while I was physically boarding a cross-country flight. Silas Thorne had literally forged my signature on a legally binding restrictive covenant. According to the California Penal Code section 470, forgery is a severe criminal offense. That meant the entire fraudulent contract was completely void ab initio, meaning it was entirely invalid from the very moment of its deceptive creation. They had absolutely no legal chains on me. In fact, I now held a massive, devastating legal weapon directly against them. I did not need to download any confidential client files to a secure external drive. The information was already permanently burned into my brain. 12 years of meticulous mental notes, complex relationship quirks, hidden contract renewal patterns, and deep client frustrations that no simple spreadsheet could ever capture. I knew exactly when the chief information officer's daughter had major surgery. I knew which massive tech account was furious about hidden billing fees. I knew the intricate back-channel corporate politics at our largest global accounts better than the executives who supposedly ran them. That was not stolen proprietary data. That was deeply earned, unbreakable personal trust. I picked up my phone and called Elias right back. "Set the meeting," I commanded. I said I wanted to meet first thing tomorrow morning. He did not even try to hide the immense satisfaction in his voice. "You got it. 8 in the morning. The small diner on Fifth Avenue." I smiled, a cold, hard smile. "Are you outsourcing the entire division in 8 months?" I asked bluntly. Miranda shifted uncomfortably in her chair, the leather squeaking loudly in the quiet room. Silas refused to answer, so I asked the question again, my voice ringing out clearly. "You are moving my entire department overseas to save money, are you not?" Still, there was nothing but heavy, suffocating silence from the executive. Then finally, Silas sneered. "I do not know what you mistakenly think you know, Julian. But it does not matter in the slightest. I stood up slowly and steadily, the folder still gripped firmly in my hand. I am completely rejecting the massive pay cut. In fact, I am resigning from this company, effective immediately. Silas let out a short, sharp, arrogant laugh. You cannot just walk out of here, Julian. You are bound by a non-compete. Sure I can, I said, leaning forward and placing both hands flat on the polished table. There is a severe problem with your supposed non-compete agreement, Silas. Mainly the fact that you actively forged my digital signature on it while I was physically boarding a commercial flight in another state. I have the airline boarding passes, the terminal security camera timestamps, and the digital forensic audit logs proving the exact origin IP address of the signature upload. Miranda's head shot down so fast she nearly gave herself whiplash. She began frantically flipping through the massive stack of compliance papers, her hands visibly shaking like leaves in a hurricane. Silas's strong jaw tightened so hard I thought his teeth might shatter. The smug arrogance completely drained from his face, replaced instantly by sheer, unadulterated panic. You will be hearing from our elite corporate lawyers, he threatened, though his voice lacked its usual commanding boom. For what exactly, I asked, mocking his tone. For breathing a little too confidently in your presence. For discovering your blatant felony violation of California Penal Code Section 470? I leaned in closer, forcing him to meet my unwavering eyes. I have not taken a single thing from this building that is not rightfully mine. I did not copy a single proprietary file. I did not forward a single confidential document to a personal email address. All I am walking out of here with is my pristine professional reputation. The deep, unbreakable trust I spent 12 years building with those massive global clients. That trust belongs entirely to me, and I am taking every single ounce of it with me. He opened his mouth, trying desperately to speak, to form some kind of coherent threat, but I was already completely done listening to his lies. I turned my attention to the trembling human resources representative. Miranda, do you happen to have a standard resignation form in that folder of yours? I asked politely. She nodded her head, barely a millimeter of movement. Slide it over here. She did. I picked up a pen, signed my name with a flourish, stood up tall, and buttoned my jacket. Silas muttered venomously under his breath. You actually think this is some kind of brilliant power move, do not you? No, I said, walking confidently toward the heavy glass door. The real power move comes next, and with that I walked out of the room. I did not look back once. I did not even make it to lunchtime the very next day before the frantic voicemails started piling up on my phone. 11 missed calls in total, all of them from Kalen Enterprises, and all of them incredibly pissed off. The first frantic message was from one of the senior regional vice presidents desperately wanting to clarify the exact nature of my sudden, chaotic departure. The second call was from someone in their massive legal department, blustering about contractual obligations they knew they could not legally enforce. The third call was from Silas himself. He did not even bother leaving a voice message. He just hung up the phone after 2 short rings like a complete coward. By mid-afternoon, my personal cell phone started lighting up continuously with names I knew just like my own family, the chief executive officers and directors from my largest accounts. All of them were deeply confused, and all of them were incredibly annoyed with Kalen Enterprises. Julian, we were explicitly told you would still be leading our massive transition. What on earth happened? Why did we hear this terrible news from a stuttering junior representative and not directly from you? I let them talk. I patiently let them vent their understandable frustrations. Then I simply told them the absolute truth, short, clean, and entirely professional. Kalen Enterprises made several drastic operational decisions that I simply could not stand behind ethically. I have left the company. That is all I can legally say for now. They understood instantly. You could literally hear it in their voices over the phone. That pregnant pause where professional anger slowly turns into deep, crystal-clear understanding of the corporate reality. Then the text messages started flooding in from my old, loyal team members. What was left of them, anyway. They sent me hilarious screenshots of the internal chaos. Silas was visibly flailing, desperately assigning complex technical accounts to junior staff members who barely knew what the underlying software even did. They were telling furious clients that someone would circle back by the end of the week when those clients desperately needed critical solutions yesterday. One of the senior engineers, a brilliant guy named Elias's brother, texted me that Silas tried to put a fresh college graduate on our biggest telecommunications account. The graduate thought it was a simple hardware maintenance account. I quickly replied to his text message. Check your personal email inbox in exactly 1 hour. I had already spoken to Donovan. Kinetics Dynamics had already lined up the massive paperwork. Highly lucrative secure job offers went out that very afternoon. Both of my former top engineers had young kids. Both of them had crushing mortgages and heavy bills. Both of them had been hanging on by a rapidly fraying thread, living in constant fear of layoffs, just like I had been. They eagerly accepted the amazing Kinetics offers before the sun even set that evening. That exact same night, I received a highly threatening email directly from Miranda in Human Resources. The bold subject line read, "Professional courtesy violation." It was a real bold move, considering she would not even look me in the eye during the meeting the day before. She furiously wrote, "It has come to our direct attention that your sudden exit may not have followed best practice, professional norms. We expect much better behavior from someone in your former esteemed position." I did not even flinch reading her pathetic corporate scolding. I simply hit the reply button and attached a high-resolution image. As for the massive KLN Enterprises Corporation, they quietly shelved their grand outsourcing plan entirely. There was no official public announcement, but I reliably heard from 3 different industry managers that the lucrative contracts with the offshore vendors were just abruptly canceled overnight. The financial bleeding was just too severe to ignore. I even unexpectedly ran into my very first boss from the early days at a massive technology trade show over in Portland. He easily spotted me from all the way across the crowded exhibition room, aggressively cut through a massive crowd of people, and pulled me into a huge, genuine hug like we were long-lost family. "They really did you incredibly dirty, Julian," he said, shaking his head in disbelief. "I am so genuinely glad you landed safely on your feet." I smiled warmly at him. "I did not just land," I corrected him proudly. "I actively jumped. Let me give you some real talk. The massive amount of money here is absolutely great, but so is the incredible freedom. I am allowed to work remotely 3 days a week, I get to handpick my own amazing clients, and I completely skip all the useless, soul-crushing administrative meetings. I honestly do not miss the brutal corporate grind at all. I just mildly miss the naive part of myself that used to foolishly think that endless grinding was the only valid way to be truly seen and valued. But the absolute biggest real win of this entire ordeal was finally learning how to look them in the eye and say no. Saying a firm no to being constantly devalued. Saying no to eating their absolute garbage with a polite smile on my face. Saying no to giving another entire year of my precious life to arrogant people who genuinely thought I would never have the courage to walk away. Now, I actually make it to all of my son's afternoon soccer games. I consistently help them with their difficult evening homework. I eat a warm dinner with my growing kids sitting at an actual wooden table, not rushing meals in the cramped driver's seat of my truck. I sleep far more than a miserable 4 hours a night. I still work incredibly hard. That strong work ethic will never change. But now, I do it entirely for visionary people who fully know exactly what immense value I bring to the table. People who deeply respect it. I honestly used to think that blind corporate loyalty was absolutely everything. It turns out that having profound self-respect matters infinitely more in the end. And if you are currently sitting there reading this, trapped in a miserable job that is slowly gutting your soul, thinking you have absolutely no viable options left, please hear this loud and clear. You always have options. And sometimes, all it really takes is making one single brave phone call to burn the whole damn cage completely down. The aftermath of that fateful Tuesday taught me more about corporate law and human nature than 12 years of grinding ever could. I spent hours reading about the Warren Act, the complex federal legislation explicitly designed to protect hardworking employees from sudden, unannounced mass layoffs by greedy corporations trying to offshore their entire workforce to save a few pennies. KLN Enterprises thought they were above the federal law. hiding their malicious intent behind the guise of simple compensation realignment. They assumed their employees were completely ignorant of their fundamental rights. But knowledge is power, and legal knowledge is the ultimate equalizer in the brutal corporate arena. When Silas forged my signature, he did not just cross an ethical line. He committed a desperate felony under California penal codes, proving that these massive corporate entities are often run by terrified middle managers willing to break the law just to meet their impossible quarterly financial targets and secure their bonuses. I often think back to that dying ficus plant in the corner of their sterile conference room. It was the perfect metaphor for what Kalen Enterprises did to the vibrant culture we had built over a decade. They sucked the oxygen and life out of the room, replacing genuine passion with suffocating bureaucracy and fear. But unlike that poor plant, I refused to just slowly wither away under their fluorescent lights. I chose to uproot myself and find far better soil to grow in. Now, as I look out over the city from my new office, I realize that true career security does not come from clinging desperately to a familiar desk or accepting diminishing returns for your hard work. It comes from knowing your intrinsic worth, building unbreakable relationships based on mutual trust, and having the sheer courage to walk away when that worth is no longer respected. The $90 million Kalen lost was not just a number. It was a profound testament to the real cost of corporate greed. So, to anyone feeling trapped by a sudden massive pay cut or a toxic management team, remember my story. Do not accept their unacceptable terms. Gather your evidence, understand your legal leverage, reach out to your network, and prepare to make your own powerful move. Because in the grand game of corporate chess, you are not just a disposable pawn. You are the player, and you always have the power to completely flip the board and walk away a winner. The intricate details of the Warren Act, specifically the Worker Adjustment and Retraining Notification Act of 1988, require employers with 100 or more employees to provide at least 60 calendar days advance written notice of a plant closing and mass layoff affecting 50 or more employees at a single site of employment. Kalen Enterprises was blatantly attempting to circumvent this strict federal mandate by forcing constructive dismissals, creating a work environment so financially intolerable that employees would voluntarily quit, thus allowing the corporation to magically avoid paying millions in legally mandated severance packages. This insidious strategy is a common tactic among massive conglomerates looking to quietly offshore their operations without drawing the intense scrutiny of the Department of Labor or the wrath of their powerful institutional shareholders. Moreover, Silas Thorne's foolish decision to forge my signature on the restrictive non-compete covenant completely violated the most fundamental principles of contract law. A contract is only legally valid if there is a genuine meeting of the minds and mutual voluntary assent. By fabricating my consent, he committed fraud in the execution, rendering the entire document void ab initio. This legal doctrine means the contract never actually existed in the eyes of the law. Furthermore, as an executive officer of Kalen Enterprises, his actions constituted a severe breach of his fiduciary duty to act in good faith and fair dealing. He exposed the entire corporation to massive legal liability, civil lawsuits, and potential criminal investigations, all to serve his own petty, short-sighted agenda of trying to trap a single employee. The sheer magnitude of the financial devastation they suffered cannot be understated. $90 million in annual recurring revenue does not just disappear overnight without causing massive shockwaves throughout the entire corporate infrastructure. It impacts their quarterly earnings reports, triggers severe panic among the board of directors, and completely destroys the valuation multiples that their executives rely heavily upon for their lucrative stock bonuses. By taking my loyal client base to Kinetics Dynamics, I did not just secure my own financial future. I actively dismantled the very economic engine that Kalen Enterprises was using to fund their aggressive, unethical expansion strategies across the global market. It was a precise, surgical strike directly at their most vulnerable financial artery, reflecting on the immense journey from that suffocating Kalen conference room to my expansive new office at Kinetics. I am struck by the profound resilience of the human spirit. We often endure unacceptable conditions simply because the fear of the unknown seems far worse than the familiar pain of our daily reality. But the moment you finally realize that the heavy chains holding you back are entirely illusory, constructed only by the manipulative tactics of those who benefit from your continued subjugation, you become truly unstoppable. The 58% pay cut was never genuinely about Kalen's financial necessity. It was always about exerting absolute psychological control. By completely rejecting their false narrative, I reclaimed my autonomy and permanently rewrote the ending to my own professional story.